Hi, Stephen. It's really nice to see you. And I really want to thank you for having you, because I want to start by sharing with everybody why I contact you and why I want to share your story with Successfully. When I found you, so as some people know, I have a fashion brand. And it's been a struggle for me to actually get it started. You know, I didn't have the background and years of experience in the fashion industry. So I was looking online and I knew I needed help. And then I found an article about you. And that's where I saw your story, your experience, how you help company and a lot of startups. So you're a fashion business developer that help a lot of companies succeed. So when I found your article, I look at the email, I was like, I need to contact this man. And you responded immediately.
Yeah, I always respond as quickly as I can.
Yeah. which was great.
I have to contact a lot of people, obviously, in the line of work I do. And it's very nice when you do get, I think it's very nice when you get a contact, a response within sort of 24 hours. But I actually had one situation where I was contacting a very large retailer on behalf of a large Vietnamese retail partner who wanted to take that retailer into Vietnam. And I contacted them, and I got a response 2 years later. And it started, sorry for the late reply. So
we've been a little busy.
Nothing ever shocked me in this business, but the extreme things that happen, you always remember.
Yeah. I know I apply at jobs before that I will get a reply a year later. Sorry, you don't fit the position. Like, thank God I wasn't waiting. Well, I wanted to share with you. I did a little display of fashion, just kind of to set the mood.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So I collect fashion illustrators. So you got some.
I only moved in here about 7 months ago, so I've got a few pictures there, but the wall will slowly get covered.
Okay. Well, I want to say a little bit of introduction to everybody. So you're a fashion business developer. You're the founder of Fashion Compass, which I love the name because you really guide companies towards the right direction. Very well.
That's always been a bit of a slogan, but yes, I mean, my main area, I work with brands and retailers to find them partners, agents, distributors, and retail partners in new markets. So Fashion Compass was quite an obvious name back 10 years ago or 11 years ago when I started it.
And you started as an entrepreneur since really, really young, correct?
Yes. Well, my father had a cash and carry, and he sort of bought and sold almost anything from cutlery to games, toys, bit of clothing. And I remember we had a chess craze and then a yo-yo craze at school. And he happened to have some of the things in, but the area he was in, there were other cash and carries, so I sometimes bought theirs. And then, all of a sudden, everybody started wanting white socks, and I got some white socks, and the next minute, there were sort of mothers waiting at the giving me orders. Can you get me this? Can you get me that? And after about, I would say after about 8 months, it got very busy, and then the headmaster pulled me into his office and said that I couldn't do it anymore. And he said, what if all the boys did it? He said that it would turn the whole outside of school into a marketplace. So I bowed my head and said, thank you. So.
You're like, okay, I'll stay quiet. But you had a early signs of the ambition and the drive of an entrepreneur, which is that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I don't think, I think when people are making brands and in today's world as well, you actually miss the aspect that what you're really doing is buying something and selling it. And the buzz that you get whether you're buying it for $50 and selling it for 60 or 80 or 100. When you've actually done that, it's a real buzz. And I kind of slightly miss that in the work I do today, because mine is more of a service. I'm selling services, not an actual, not a product that I'm buying and negotiating for. So I kind of miss that, but I've kind of always been in that area.
Well, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you and share, because you say that you're offering services and consulting, but it's not accessible to find someone like you and to help startups. And I don't want to take away from your accomplishment. I like to bring them up and mention how you have helped companies with the growth, scale, connect with distributors, agencies from all over the world, like markets in UK, United States, Asia, Australia, all over Europe. And you help the brands with brand development, wholesale, retail, e-commerce, buying, sales, marketing. So all aspects, you provide the strategy. So services, it might sound simple, but it's a big deal, because there's so many people like startups like me, or even large companies that need that. They need your help.
Yes, I mean, as I said, I've been doing this now for sort of nearly 11 years, and one of the beauties is that most brands, however big, however small, it's almost like a starting gun goes off at the start of the season, and they're head down, buried in their work for sort of 3-4 months, and then they sort of bring their head up, see where they are. But when companies work with me, they know there's somebody consistently looking at new markets and new opportunities for their business. I've worked with all sorts of brands, from startups right through to brands owned by large conglomerates, where they need retail partners to enter new markets, or they need agents, sales distribution. Brands in Australia, if they're coming into Europe, they're going to need at least one distributor that can import the goods for them and handle the duties and distribution to the logistics side of it, as well as having a sales agency. So with the agents, distributors are basically agents that they buy the goods, and agents sell the goods and work on a commission basis.
And to bring a point to the services and all the experience you had, the next question would be, how do you get into fashion? Because there's a lot of people that will need your services, but there also will be people that, I want to do what you do. Like, how did you start it? How did you get into the fashion industry?
Well, into the fashion industry, as I said, I was more or less sort of doing a bit of it at school. And then when I left school, I did an unofficial apprenticeship with a chain of boutiques, and I said to the owner, I just want to learn. And he sort of threw me into the warehouse for 8 weeks. He threw me into every weekend I was working in one of the stores. Then when the area managers went on holiday, I would cover for them for 4 weeks. And I've really got thrown in at the deep end, but it was such a learning curve. Not just learning, things about what's going on, but it was, gave me a lot of confidence as well. Because every time you threw me in, I said, "Oh crikey, what am I doing here?" But within a couple of days, you sort of, you get into it, you learn from other people, and it was a really great experience for 2 years for me. And then I went with my sister. We started clothing, and we opened 3 what we call in the UK concessions, that mostly known as shop-in-shops, just as a test. And within sort of 3 years, I had 400 concessions within, which was then the Burton Group, now Arcadia Group, with James Topshop, Dorothy Perkins, and we had 400 of those going. Plus, I was supplying around thousands of independent, what you call specialty stores in Europe, through agents, through distributors. And yeah, we built up a very, very good clothing business right through to really till 2000. And then things started to change. Independents were either closing or getting pushed to less busy footfall areas, etc. And yeah, that later into 2005 is when I thought I need to kind of reinvent myself. And that's when I sort of considered Fashion Compass, and helping. Initially, it was to help foreign brands to come into the UK, and then suddenly I was dragged into by a very old connection who had also kind of moved into a different area, and he was taking large Italian brands like Versace and Gucci, the Miss 60. He was taking those brands into India and working for the large Indian retail partners. And he suddenly phoned me up and said, look, do you want to get involved in this? Because they're interested in British brands and other brands that you may know. And I just thought, oh, this sounds really good. I didn't really have a business plan. I sort of just thought to myself, this sounds good. Yeah, it's been quite a long journey, worth it.
So why worth it? Why fashion is worth it to you?
Now I basically, it's something I know. It's something I'm familiar with. I went out of the fashion industry sort of twice for a year. Partly the first time was I felt I didn't like it anymore, and I tried something else for a year. And then when I came back into it, I sort of accepted it more. I said to you earlier, the Prophet Muhammad says, you can't truly love anything until you've rejected it at least once. And he was referring to religion. That I really understood what he meant is, a lot of us, we get fed up with our job or fed up with the town we're in or something like that. And we go somewhere else. And then we kind of, when we come back, we realize nothing's perfect, and we accept it for what it is. And then when you kind of accept that, and you know it, and I feel like I know the fashion business, and I don't mean that as in I know everything about it, but I feel confident that it's going to supply me with a good living, and I can give it a good service at the end of the day.
And it's natural to you. You've been doing it for so long. You know it from the back to the front, you begin and end, all the areas. So it's natural to you. And it's a very desirable industry. So many people want to get in. And then actually, you're very fortunate this came kind of natural to you from an early age.
Yes, it did. There's, I won't say I know everything about it, but I think over the years where I've been lucky is I think more or less I've been exposed in many, many different areas, be it a luxury end, premium, commercial end, retail, wholesale. Majority has been wholesale. Some of it's been e-commerce. I've had a couple of shops so back in the day, so I've touched on a lot of it, but equally I've specialized in over the years. I've always been specialized in certain things, but because I've had such an overview of it, especially with startups and even very large companies, we all sit there, and I'm looking at the department stores in the UK at the moment, which are sort of all struggling, closing stores. One's gone into liquidation and these sort of things. And I've been, not that they've listened and anything, but I've been saying for years, they are doing nothing to reach out to the next generation. And, if you walk down the high street in the UK, and I think in many countries, it's the same names that are there, that were there 20 years ago, 30 years ago in many cases. But that's an area where I would like to work more really with these bigger stores, because I don't think they're looking in the right places. Much of it is being managed by the venture capitalist and the accountants. And I don't know any accountants that started a fashion business, but I know plenty of them that finished them off.
They take care of the numbers.
They do. But I think, I always remember when Volkswagen had the accountant was head of Volkswagen for many years, and they didn't do too well. And then when they made the head designer the CEO, all of a sudden, the cars were much nicer. People were buying a lot more of them. So I think at the moment in a lot of retail, as soon as the money side of it takes control, the customer starts to lose out, and then the customer goes somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's got to be that emotional connection for the customer.
Yes.
Do you have any preference on retail or e-commerce or startups or establishment?
Working, I enjoy working with all aspects. I think it's more about the people I'm working with. Bottom line, if I'm working with somebody who's a pure startup and they're full of energy and that you can really sense that there's a drive in them. And then, equally, I'm working with quite a large e-commerce project at the moment, where, it's very different to working with a startup. But it's really the people, the three guys that are starting this e-commerce company are, they're just such nice people. And I've always, I remember reading many years ago, a good brand is a relationship between the owner and its consumer. And what I find is, when you get an owner who's really, really nice and everything, it's very much about getting that character into the product or the shop or the website, whatever they're doing, as much as all the other stuff as well.
Got it. And people always make all the difference, no matter where you're working, it's just that relationship. It's that makes it even a greater experience to work with someone. Yes,
very much so. I've been very lucky in the variation of brands and companies that I've worked for. I've worked for large Chinese retailers to help them enter the Middle East. I've worked with Australian brands to come into Europe and the US. I've worked with US brands and put them into China and Europe and everything. And some of them are footwear, some of them are accessories and these. And one of the beauties that I enjoy most is, as well as targeting certain markets for the brand, I speak to the brand and we decide which markets are best for them and which markets they have in mind. And sometimes, maybe through LinkedIn, I'll just do a posting that this brand is looking for partners or agents. And suddenly we get a response from somebody in South Africa or something, a country we'd never even thought of, just purely through, you could call it luck, but equally it's, I've got a lot of contacts on LinkedIn, so.
Well, LinkedIn is a spot in social media. It looks very subtle, but like everybody's going on Instagram, but LinkedIn is the one that's making more profit.
Yes, they do. I don't pay them any of it.
Yeah, most of us don't.
It's the recruiters, but they earn the money off it. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you started your business, Fashion Compass, what was like the biggest challenges that you remember? Like you have your business, now you're on your own. Well, you've been on your own for a while, but this is your business. What challenges you had? that you remember?
It was very different because I was very much on my own. Before, I always had a company. You know, my sister was my partner. We employed people and everything else. This was very much me at a desk with a laptop, starting fresh. You know, and not having total belief in what that I could do that I set out. But I said to myself, you know, it's not rocket science. It's really about using the contacts I've got and building more and more. You know, more contacts with agents, distributors, more contacts with brands. And the biggest challenge I had, as I said, the friend contacted me regarding brands to India, and I had been thinking, and I'd started, by that time I'd started talking to brands who wanted to come into the UK. And the biggest challenge I had was within 3 months of deciding I'm going to do this, I was in talks with a very large UK brand, and I had a 50,000 intro fee being discussed and everything. And suddenly the downturn came. That was around October 2008, if I remember correctly. And, you know, all of a sudden, the brand we were talking to backed out because everybody just batten down the hatches at home and protect what you have and don't look for growth. And here's me starting a business, which was very much, so 70% of it was about international trade. So I sort of sat down to myself and I said, look, you are not going to earn a penny over the next 6 to 8 months doing international trade. So I thought, well, I'll focus totally on building my contacts up. I actually went and got a job in a warehouse just to keep my sanity and a few shekels coming in at the same time. And yeah, it was a very challenging time. And even the first 2 years, you know, you never knew where the next job was coming from. I didn't have clear references to show people. I was spending a lot of time trying to sell my services and then going to meetings for, you know, and then, you know, it took me sort of 4 to 5 years before I got a rhythm. And I think with most businesses, you find a rhythm of doing something. Once you find that, you can tweak it, you can build on it, but you've always got that rhythm, and you know, you've got work coming in, and because there's nothing worse than you know, suddenly looking at the next 2 months and thinking, where's my next customer coming from, or that sort of thing. Yeah,
it's too stressful.
Well, fortunately now it's very self-generating, loads of references, and you know, it's easier to get work, but it's still very challenging because every brand, every designer, every retailer I speak to is very, very different. So it's almost, you know, I always draw lines like I'm starting again whenever I work with a new client.
That is what's fascinating about fashion. Independent the startup company region, it's also the style, right? Like I can kind of see that wherever designer is, maybe in the United States or maybe in Europe, probably the style and the target market is completely different.
Well, one of the first things, you know, no matter how small or big the brand is, when I first work with them, I work on their presentation. If we're going after distributors in new markets, and quite often, you know, especially with designers, they contact me and they say, whoever they contact, they say, here's my Instagram, here's my Facebook, here's my website, here's my lookbooks, here's my line sheets, and they're giving that person a 20-minute job just to, you know, as an introduction of themselves. So. And even with large retailers, you know, they're sending their whole brand profile over. What I do is I condense it. The way I look at it is, you know, when you send your CV to get a job, you're not sending it to get the job, you're sending it to get the interview. So you know, with a CV, you just give them an outline enough to judge whether they want to see you or not. So that's what I do with a brand in the beginning. If they're startups, quite often there's quite a lot of brand work to do. If they're more advanced, their branding is good, but the presentation and the way we're contacting and reaching out, because, you know, if I get contacted by brands, and, you know, you're sitting there in the morning having your coffee, you open your emails on your phone, and you see it. So I'm picturing an agent doing the same thing, who's received an email from a brand, you know, and if you've got one PDF with like eight pages, with some product, with some press, with some where the brand is, what it's about, very clear, so that they can understand that in 30 to 40 seconds. Then they can reply, yes, I'm interested, please send me the line sheets, etc. You know, even with large companies, I still, that is a very important part of the process that I work with.
Yeah, I can see that. So as an entrepreneur, what do you think are your biggest accomplishments that you're proud of?
Well, I can't mention any names because of NDAs and things like that. But was it around 4 years ago, I was putting a very large UK retail brand together with a very large Hong Kong-based but Greater China operator, who were taking brands in and opening stores, and they interested. And I was talking to the head of the brand and the head of the Chinese company, and I just said, guys, look, both the owners of these companies were very high profile figures, and I said, guys, look, why don't we just get your owners together? And I actually played a part in you know, I think he's one of the UK's wealthiest guys, and I know that the Chinese guy was the second richest in China at the time. And, I was working with their secretaries so that they could arrange to meet on the tarmac of an airport somewhere that they were both going to be at, and have a meeting on their private jet. It was very exciting. I was very proud of myself, because I just had a little moment where I thought, wow, there's not many people that have done this, or could actually are actually set up to do it. And the deal never actually came off, but they did me, and I'd done my bit. So yeah, I was very proud of that. Yeah,
That's a big deal. That's not an easy thing to do.
yeah, it is. But equally, you know, I've had some. I've worked with some very, very nice brands. One of my first successes coming out of that downturn, I worked for a very big German brand called Strelson, who do lovely menswear. The people that own it, some time ago, owned Hugo Boss, and they wanted me to get them some agents. The first one I got them was a UK distributor, very, very established distributor, and that was my first real introduction, and it was very meaningful for me, because it warranted everything I've been striving to do. It wasn't about the money, it wasn't about anything. It was like, you know, I've put that brand with that distributor, and they're now coming into the UK, and it warranted everything I've been working on.
And you made that happen. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
So how do you see yourself now helping clients successfully?
Yeah, well, if they're looking, I think initially, whatever they're doing, whether they're a startup or a large retailer, or, you know, a brand, it could be a big brand in the US who are looking outwards now at new markets. It's worth getting in touch with me. I do a kind of 1 to 2 hour Skype call with them, and really get to grips with what they're doing. I charge a very small fee for that, which I refund if they take my service, and really just go through things, because whatever they're looking to do, I don't think anybody who I've done that call with, and I've done well over 200 now, nobody's ever sort of said, oh, that was a waste of time. So as a first step, you know, reach out. Secondly, you know, whether if you're starting a new brand, I can save you a lot of money and time and effort in, not making certain mistakes or going down wrong avenues. And, I meet a lot of startups who within 6 months, their sales are not going too well. So they suddenly start thinking, because they've seen an advert on their government or whatever, oh, my goods might sell well in Japan and these sort of things. And all of a sudden they're looking at Japan instead of looking at their domestic market. You must be strong in the domestic market. There's hardly any brands that are, good in 2 or 3 countries unless they're strong at home. One of the first things an agent or distributor will look at is how strong is this brand at home, because if they're not strong at home, why should they be strong here? So we run through all these things. With larger brands, some of them, depending where they're from, a lot of US brands, for example, the larger ones, they kind of think, well, we're doing 100 million in the US, and we've got a sort of 250 million population. Therefore, in the UK, that has a 60 million population, we should be doing around 10 million. They kind of calculate that in their heads, which is fair enough. But with most of them, if they're a sort of wholesale brand, they're going to be lucky to do 20 to 30,000 in the first season. So you have to kind of really it's not so much bringing down expectations, but they are an unknown brand in that country, despite the fact they're doing 100 million, and that can create quite a big ego for the company. We're big, we're strong. Or even if they're doing 10 million, we're big, we're strong, we've got lots of customers, and everyone's coming in telling them what fantastic collection they've got. Unless they're opening stores, that's a different case. But if they're looking to work with agents and distributors, the key thing is in that first few seasons is which stores they go in. Because if they get into the best stores, then all the other stores are watching those stores. What new brands are they getting? So very quickly you can go from the sort of 30,000 to 250,000 within 3 or 4 seasons, then maybe open a shop in shop or something like that as well. And then it builds. But what I find most of all is when brands kind of expect big figures, they don't get them in the first couple of seasons. They start getting down the agent's throat and blaming the agent. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? And the good thing having a third party, someone like me, is I can actually tell them before they enter that this is what you're likely to do. And also, if a year down the road, maybe I haven't, once I've done the introduction, maybe a year down the road, the brand contacts me and say, things aren't going to plan. And I will usually speak to them and say, look, you need to have a bit more patience. It really depends on what business they have done and what they're not doing. It can be, I try and take them, if you're entering a new market, normally I'm dealing with high ranking or the owner. I try and take them back to when they started their business in their country, what a struggle it was. It's not too different entering a new market sometimes. The more if their mindset is in that we're going to make this work, it's far more likely to make it work than saying in the mindset the agent's going to make it work.
That's why strategy is so important, especially because the fashion industry is so expensive and very quickly money can just disappear. You're just investing and no money coming in. And that's why, like, I'll speak from my experience with you, like me being a startup, a little designer, like I'm not a big name or have the funds to go all over and produce. Yes. Having that conversation with you after being a few years struggling, I thought, you know what, I need to stop and think, what am I doing? I just, instead of following what everybody's telling me, do this, do that, I needed like the brains to really think about what am I trying to accomplish? So that's why by even just having a simple consultation, it's good to just get a sense of what am I trying to accomplish, how am I gonna get there, and work with somebody that has the contacts and experience and knowledge. So that's what I saw, that with you, with Successfully, there's tons of designers I know that they're going to want to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, as I said, department stores are not in the business of establishing new designers, new brands. Their space is so expensive. When they put a brand there, it's got to be pretty well known to pay for that space. And it's a bit of a catch-22. And they don't really have the marketing skills or the be-all and end-all to put an unknown brand there, no matter how good the product is, and make it sell, kind of thing, generally. So, you've got to work with speciality stores, or as we call them, independents, first and foremost. And quite often, as I said earlier, people, if they're not making headway within 6 months, they start looking at, Scandinavia would be good for my product, or, the European, the US would be better, or here would be better. But I usually do take them back to their local area, get working, go and talk to some stores, show them the product, get working locally. If you get into a store, speak to the owner, can we do a wine evening, invite your customer, starting small. And even with large retailers now, don't come into a market with a big fanfare and all the fireworks and a hoi polloi kind of thing. It's much better to come in small, open small, start, get a feel for it, get your logistics working, get your staff happy. Acting small but thinking big. Really, it's a common saying, but it's not practiced enough.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty common mistake. Well, I really enjoyed chatting with you and getting a little more detail about your experience and all your knowledge. And I am happy to share with everybody. I think you can bring so much value to Successfully, and just in general, anybody that's looking, the passion about fashion. So thank you. I'm happy to have you on board as part of the Successfully.
Thank you, Yvette. It's a pleasure to be on board. It really is. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.